pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Justin. Just a minute before we get started, just to remind everybody, if you have a cell phone and it's not muted, we'd ask you to mute your cell phone, please. And if you have to make or receive any calls or text messages, you go out and do that in the hallway. So that being said, we'll move right on to public comment. We reserve public comments for public comment on any topic other than what an agenda item, a quasi-judicial land use matter, or a topic scheduled for a public hearing. And if you make sure, I only have one comment. If it's for the agenda item, you come forward and let us know. And as a chair, I might limit the length of individual comments, depending on who wants to comment, what subject they want to comment on. So that being said, we'll move into our public comments section. I have one public comment, and that's Joseph Gall. So, Joe, you want to come forward? Take your time and come on up, Joe. Again, Joseph, if you'd state your name and address for the record, please.
Good morning. I am Joseph Gall. I am a resident of Yamhill County. I do live in a mobile home, and in that mobile home is in a mobile home park. And Oregon law says if it's on your land, then it's real property. If it's not on your land and you're paying rent, then it's personal property. Oregon law says personal property, not used in a business, used for personal use, is tax exempt. However, the assessor has chosen to tax my mobile home, and the Board of Property Tax Appeals has chosen to uphold it. Not only did they choose to uphold the assessor's assessment, but they chose to reclassify the home as real property, which they have no authority to do. The Constitution, Article 1 says laws are written by the legislature, only the legislature, not even the courts. And so we have a dilemma. And that dilemma is in that every time I come before the Board of Property Tax Appeals, as well as here sometimes, I'm reminded that the Supreme Court has ruled that the tax is authorized, and I disagree with the Supreme Court because they can violate their oath just like anybody else, which they have twice. They violated their oath to uphold the illegal taxation of my mobile home. So where do we go from here? I submit to you that we in Yamhill County, every county, you have the authority, the legal authority, to prosecute anyone who is violating the laws of the state. And that legal authority comes within ORS 203. And I would very much like to see this body of commissioners take the bull by the horn, so to speak, and assert their authority under the law, and order the attorney who serves at the pleasure of the commissioners, order him to prosecute this violation of law. And that authority is also in 203, ORS 203, to order the attorney, the local attorney, and even prosecute the attorney, I'm getting so old, my mind wanders. You'll have to forgive me for that.
That's right. I'm not as old as you, Joe. My
Yeah,
mind wanders
but-
all the time.
The district attorney, what I was trying to think, he was trying to say, you actually in 203 have the authority to prosecute the district attorney if he's not doing his job. So I'd like to see this group, and this is a new group here. Casey, Commissioner Kula is the latest, and Commissioner Olson is just about a year old. And Mary Starrett, Commissioner Starrett, has been around quite a while. And she would like to uphold and enforce the law as it is written, not as the courts say, because the courts can't write law. They're only authorized to interpret the law as to its constitutionality as it applies to that particular law. And their authority doesn't go from one court to another. It's only a court case, only a judge can refer to a previous court opinion as court precedent, but they don't have to comply with the court precedent. And that's where I'm coming from. You don't have to comply with the courts as they ruled over the past years and ruled against, or I should say, they ruled with the illegal assessment. And so I'd like for you folks to let's have a new day and assert your authority and responsibilities under ORS 203. And forgive me for having lapses of memory and mind and whatever. And I think you know where I'm coming from. I've given you a handout, a brief handout in a binder. And if you'll take the time to look, you'll see the different violations contained within that binder. And the most glaring is the fact that the BOPTA, their decision was right at the very top of the page. They says they refer to this as real property, and it isn't real property. It isn't. It's personal property, and it's tax exempt according to law. And I think I better be quiet because my mind is wandering, and I thank you very much for your time, and I wish you well. And
Thank you, Mr. Goff.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Gall.
Thank you, Joseph.
Mr. Chair, may I make a comment?
Sure.
And just a request and see if the board, I know I've struggled with this over the years. I mean, I look at what it says, I've spoken to council, and I've tried to understand and really get some peace about it, and I never do. It's kind of like one of those things. It reminds me of this foreclosure thing we have pending in Salem, where it's like the law says you can do it, and what does the law really say? But is that just and fair and constitutional and all that? So I would really appreciate maybe we spend some time at a short work session just having county council kind of take this, what it says, and sort of just go over it again so that there is more clarification, because I never do get clarification on it.
I'm open to that.
I'm open to that. Matter of fact, I'd like to see the county council and the assessor, maybe at one of our work sessions, come, because since he does represent a lot of the assessors statewide, and have county council, and I'm all for having a work session on this. So Ken, add it to the mailing list of things, and let's see if we can put together a work session.
Will do.
On this. So what we'll do is we'll get together in one of our work sessions, schedule a work session where the commissioners and legal counsel and the assessor can get together, and we can have more discussions on this, Joseph.
thank you. Thank you all, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Mr. Gall.
Mr. Gall.
Thank you for coming.
I don't think you're gonna see me again because you're all gonna be with us for 4 years, and I've said my piece, and I think I'm correct in my interpretation of the law. It requires no interpretation, just read it for what it is, and take action. Put this guy to work and tell him to prosecute that assessor and members of the board
Okay.
of appeal. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Mr. Gall.
Thank you, Joseph.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gall.
Okay, for public comment, I do not have any other cards for public comment, so therefore we'll move on to our consent agenda. Commissioners, on our consent agenda, we have the minutes of the January 10th and January 17th and February 19th and February 28th formal sessions and March 5th, 2019 informal sessions. We have the contracts and grant wonders and agreement between the Housing Authority of Yamhill County and Yamhill County Health and Human Services to support low-income housing needs, retroactive to April 1, 2019. A approval to authorize our Health and Human Service Director, Silas O'Halloran Steiner, on behalf of Yamhill County Health and Human Services to apply for the promoting integration of primary and behavioral health care PIB-BHC grant administered through Oregon Health Authority to support our certified community behavioral clinic, health clinic. And then we have committee, and that application deadline is April 15th. Committees, we have approval of the following changes to the Yamhill County Mental Health and Development Disabilities Advisory Committee, and that's accept the resignation of Charlie Bates, appoint Pauline Medizin and Tiffany Swanson, whose term would expire May 2022, and reappoint Robert Porsche, Tim Swenson, Nancy Kayam, Christy Long, Megan Ramos, and Aaron Stevens McKay to terms to expire May 22. So do we have anything we need to remove off the consent agenda, Commissioners? Okay, if none, I'll entertain a motion that we accept the consent agenda.
Make a motion that we accept the consent agenda.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Kula to accept the consent agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Let the record show that the consent agenda was unanimously approved by Commissioner Kula, Commissioner Starrett, and Commissioner Olson. So that then will move us on to old business. We do not have any old business on the agenda. Other business, and this is always fun to do, other business consideration of adopting Resolution 19-04-11-1, proclaiming April 7th through 13th, 2019 as National Crime Victims' Rights Week. And before we'll do that, and I read the resolution, we'll ask if the district attorney or anybody would like to make any comments. Our favorite pen.
Thank you for, she doesn't have her corrective collar on today, so Sarah was pointing out to me that she might not want to do the up this morning, so.
Well, she did it. She did a good job.
Yes, she did.
Oh, I didn't get it. Can you do that again? I'm sorry.
I can try.
Mary's got to get a picture.
Mary Beth, up, Mary Beth, up.
Oh,
There
good
she
girl, do it real
goes.
quick.
Nice
Girl.
job.
Sorry about that, Mary Beth. Thank you.
Good girl. Yeah.
Good girl, Mary Beth.
Her speaking would be much shorter if we did.
Yes.
Aw.
Thank you for the invitation to speak momentarily. Victims' Rights Week is really a week where we spend a little bit of time recognizing the role of victims in the criminal justice system. And historically, the role of victims in the criminal justice system was like way down at the bottom. I've said for, I can't remember how long now, but everybody involved in the criminal justice system is there because they choose to be. You know, police officers because they choose that as a profession. My colleagues who are prosecutors, we choose it as a profession. Defense attorneys, even defendants by their conduct have voluntarily brought themselves into the criminal justice system. The only person in the criminal justice system that's not there voluntarily is a victim. And we need to honor the rights. I think Oregon is out front on having not only statutory rights for victims, but constitutional rights, and we should be proud of that. My office, as you all know from watching how we do our business, we are victim-centric. We involve victims as much as we can in not only the decisions we make, but input and helping them through what is otherwise a difficult system to engage and to navigate. And we spend a lot of time and resources to make that to be as least traumatic as it can be. In other words, do what we can to not re-traumatize a victim with the criminal justice system as it operates. Mary Beth is just one of our tools to aid people, particularly vulnerable victims and witnesses who come and to work with us, who come to be involved in the system, and she's a great aid. I can't say enough about Sarah Grabner, who's sitting behind me, who is her full-time handler, and you don't have to come to our office very many Monday mornings or Wednesdays or Thursdays when we're running grand jury to see that Sarah and Mary Beth are side by side with victims of crime and trying to aid them in both information as well as trying to make a system that makes it more comfortable for them. So the proclamation, I think, is important. I think it's important for the community to recognize the role of victims in the criminal justice system and to ensure that we never forget that victims have rights in the system as well as defendants. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Brad.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to make a comment
Certainly.
about, if I can, about your office and about, I know Deb Bridges has one of those unsung heroes. We don't hear about often the calls out late at night or some of the really difficult things that your department, Victims' Rights Department's Victims Assistance does over there, and how they do things that the rest of the community has absolutely no idea they do in terms of support. So if you'd pass along, that we appreciate that.
I will. Thank you. Very kind words. And Deb is not only my office manager now, but she continues to be Director of Victim Services. And she, kudos to her, she has taught me a lot about what we can do for victims. And I think we have one of the most, if not the most, proactive services that we provide to victims, including call-outs in the middle of the night, including we engage with law enforcement in death notifications, for example, things that other offices have never even considered doing. And you know, yes, I approve it and all that, but I attribute it to the really good ideas of my staff, and Deb in particular, who has come back with idea after idea after idea that aid the community and victims of crime. So thank you very much for saying that.
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you.
Okay, hearing none, I'll go ahead and read I'll read the resolution then for the record. And this is in the matter of a resolution in support of the National Crime Victims' Rights Week, and which is April 7th through 13th, 2019. And this is Board of Commissioners Resolution 19-04-11-1. Whereas over 150,000 Oregonians are directly harmed by crime each year, and the physical, emotional, and financial impact of crime falls on people of all ages and abilities who come from all economic, racial, and social backgrounds, and these crimes affect many more family members, friends, neighbors, and co-workers. And whereas victims who feel understood and supported are more likely to disclose their victimization, seek services, and participate in the justice process. And whereas providing victims with the knowledge of their rights and available services further strengthen their ability to recover by restoring a sense of self-empowerment. And whereas a trauma-informed response to victims promotes healing and fosters strength in survivors. And whereas we celebrate those who provide help and support to children victims of violence and sexual abuse, stalking victims, survivors of homicide victims, victims of drunk driving crashes, and victims of domestic, dating, and sexual violence, and many other life-altering crimes, and their commitment to respect and enforce victims' rights and address their needs. And whereas National Crime Victims' Rights Week provides an opportunity to recommit to ensuring that all victims of crimes are afforded their rights, and whereas Yamhill County is hereby dedicated to strengthening victims and survivors in the aftermath of crime, building resilience in our communities and our victim responders, and working for justice for all victims and survivors. And now therefore, the Yamhill County Board of Commissioners do proclaim the week of April 7th through 13th, 2019 as National Crime Victims' Rights Week, and reaffirm Yamhill County's commitment to creating a victim service and criminal justice response that assists all victims of crime during Crime Victims' Rights Week and throughout the year, and to express our sincere gratitude and appreciation for those community members, victim service providers, and criminal justice professionals who are committed to improving our response to all victims of crime so they may find relevant assistance, justice, support, and peace. Done this 11th day of April 2019, Yamhill County Board of Commissioners, Richard L. Rick Olson, Mary Starrett, and Casey Kula. So thank you, Brad, and thank you, Sarah, and thanks to all your staff for the
Thank you.
wonderful job they do.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
I would move approval of the resolution.
Oh, excuse me. Move approval of we have a approval that we actually moves. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, let it show that Resolution 1904-11-1 was unanimously approved by the Yamhill County Board of Commissioners, with Commissioner Rick Olson, Mary Starrett, and Casey Kula all voting in the affirmative. That takes us to our second item of other business, and this is consideration of accepting the proposed Yamhill County Economic Development Community Grant. So does anybody want to speak to that, Ken, or anybody want to speak to that? I think we have the information.
I would
on
move
that.
approval, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so we do have a move that recommendation that we accept the proposed Yamhill County Economic Development Community Grant Program. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, let it show that the Commissioners voted unanimously to approve accepting the proposed Yamhill County Economic Development Community Grant Program. The third thing is consideration of the appointment of the following to serve on the 2019-2020 Grants Review and Recommendation Committee for Yamhill County Economic Development Community Grant Program, as recommended by SEDCOR, State Economic Development Corporation, and the Economic Development Advisory Council. And those people are Susan Juarez, Alvin Elbert, Devin Paola, Barbara Bond, Kenna West, Kevin Perkins, and Dennis Durham. So I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we approve item DA, or item D2, excuse me.
D3.
Consideration three.
D3.
D3, I circled it.
Okay, so-
D3.
So we have a motion that we approve item number D3. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, let it show that the commission unanimously approved item number D3. That takes us to item number 4, and this is consideration of accepting ODOT Bridge Committee Grant Award to rehabilitate the Deer Creek Park Road Bridge during the 2024 through 2024 federal bridge funding, project funding. We heard about that Tuesday, and I don't know, Catherine's here. Would anybody like to speak to that item?
This is what Bill Gilly had brought
Spoke
forward
to
on Tuesday.
right? So therefore, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
So moved. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Let it show that the commission unanimously approved accepting the ODOT Bridge Committee Grant Award to rehabilitate the Deer Creek Park Road Bridge, and that would be in the 2022 through 2024 federal bridge project funding. So that'll take us to item number 5, and this is consideration of approval of change order number 2 to an agreement between Yamhill County and Baker Rock Resources, and that would be change order number 2 to board order 18158 for the 2018 Maintenance Improvement Project, MIP Public Works Overlay Project, effective upon approval. Total project cost in the amount of $179,350.90.
Could that be 2019? Should that be 2019?
It's for the 2018.
It's for the 2018.
It's for the 18-19
We haven't
MIP
waited
list.
until,
Oh.
McMinnville did theirs.
Okay. Thank you.
And again, this was approved previously approved as part of the MIP project. ran out of time last construction season, and so they're ready to act on this next week.
Yep.
And so that's why the
So it's
change
part of
order
the
for the
28
change of date,
part of the
and,
Okay,
correct.
And the price of asphalt went up, but the total volume went down.
Right.
So we're
Correct.
still below budget.
Okay, thanks for the clarification, Ken. Thanks for the question, Mary. So I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
So move. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none then, so let's, the board unanimously approves consideration of change order number 2 to agreement between Yamhill County and Baker Rock Resources, which was board order 18-158, and that'll be for the 2018 MIP overlay project in the amount of $179,350.90.
And thank you, Catherine.
Thank you, Catherine.
thank you, Catherine.
Okay, that takes us to our, okay, thank you. That takes us to our next item, and that's item number E, in a public hearing. And this public hearing is docket number C 3418, and this was an appeal of the Planning Commission's approval of a conditional use request to increase the number of guest rooms offered in an existing bed and breakfast from 4 guest rooms to 9, and the applicant was the Abbey Road Farm. So I will go ahead and I'll open the public hearing. I'll call for any abstentions by the commission. No abstentions. And I'll ask the parties if there are any objections to our jurisdiction to hear this matter. Hearing none, does any of the board members need to announce for the record, any ex parte contact on this issue?
No.
No.
Okay, thank you, board. Then number 5, Counselor Planner, we'll go ahead and move for the reading of the statements required by state law to be read at the open of quasi judicial. Ken?
Oregon law requires that persons who attend a land use hearing be advised of certain rights and duties before the hearing begins. First, with regard to the standards for approval, state law, ORS 197.763 sub 5, requires that we list the applicable substantive criteria that must be met in order for the county to approve the application. The standards will be listed by the county planner in a moment as part of the staff report. Testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed towards the standards for approval. Second, the raise it or waive it rule. Under Oregon law, any issue that might be raised in an appeal of the county's decision in this matter must be raised before the record of this hearing is closed. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision makers and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal to the board based on that issue. Third, and this is directed at the applicant, under ORS 197.796, failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues related to proposed conditions of approval, again with sufficient specificity to allow the county to respond to the issue, precludes any actions for damages in circuit court. Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Planning Director. Get my next page out here, and then first of all, then we'll go ahead and go with the staff report.
Thank you, Chairman Olson. The applicant's parcel is approximately 80 acres in size. The primary access for the bed and breakfast guests is from Oak Springs Farm Road. The proposed bed and breakfast expansion was for 2 additional guest rooms to be rented from the converted silos and 3 guest rooms to be rented from the secondary farm help dwelling that the applicant refers to as the ranch house. Recently, the applicant and appellant have mutually agreed to reduce the number of guest rooms that will be rented on the property from the 9 originally requested down to 5. The applicant has also agreed not to rent guest rooms from the dwelling originally permitted as a secondary farm help dwelling, unless the applicant receives land use approval in the future. The remaining background facts for this application may be found in the written record.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we'll go ahead and move on to the applicant's case. If the applicant has anything they want to add, come forward, please, and again, state your name and address for the record.
Good morning. My name is Elaine Albridge, 1300 Southwest 5th Avenue, Suite 2400 in Portland, Oregon, 97210. I'm here on behalf of Abbey Road Farm. And I want to thank staff for working with us on this project. And I also want to extend a thanks to Catherine with Friends of Yamhill County. We worked together over the past week or so to reach a mutually agreeable settlement for this appeal. So I was excited to be able to come to this hearing in that frame. So we appreciate the work done to date, and we are supportive of the settlement agreement, and we would request that the board adopt the settlement agreement as the parties have agreed.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That'll get us the testimony in support of the application, and this isn't appeals, so would they fall, now that the agreement's worked out, would the friends that want to comment fall under the opposition or in the?
I think it's still opposition.
Still opposition? Okay, thank you. Is there any other testimony in support of the application? Hearing none, since this is an appeal, we'll move into the appellant's case. And is there an organized spokesman? Catherine, come on forward. Again, state your name and address for the record.
Catherine Jernstedt. I'm here representing Friends of Yamhill County. My personal residence is at 8156 Northeast Mineral Springs Road in Carlton. Again, appreciate the opportunity and also the discussions and cooperation here. Friends of Yamhill County works to protect our natural resources. We've been through this before. I would state that we concur with the proposed changes in the conditions of approval as submitted in the attachment of Elaine Albrecht's email from late yesterday, and to satisfy our appeal on this docket number. We enter into this agreement in good faith, but at the same time acknowledging that areas of disagreement still exist between the parties. However, they are outside the scope of these proceedings and do not, in our opinion, represent a barrier to the agreement. In this process, the Planning Commission discussions, deliberations, we would like to ask that the Board of Commissioners in another forum have a broader discussions of those issues. It was not a unanimous decision at the Planning Commission, and I think some interesting issues were raised there regarding policy, enforcement, and interpretation in the sphere of evolving issues, evolving uses, ownership and rule changes, and that sort of activity. And Mr. Friday did say that he and his staff are guided by policy direction given to them. So it is incumbent on you as elected leaders to give this policy guidance. And direction to the staff and agencies. The integrity and equitable application of the comprehensive plan and Yamhill County zoning ordinances is in your purview. There are also issues around disadvantaging existing landowners and businesses who've taken the measures to comply. It's not possible, I think I'm repeating myself here, that it is not possible to write rules that anticipate every situation. Exceptions exist as a sort of pressure relief valve in the regulatory process. But this makes overarching policy guidance even more important. Parties read different things into documents. For example, the comprehensive plan. And I'm not ascribing malice, just that's the way it is. Care needs to be taken about who has the authority to dismiss criteria outside of the prescribed rulemaking process. And for details on that, I would refer you to the tapes, more than the minutes of the deliberations of the Planning Commission. There's also merit in looking back at the consequences, intended and otherwise, of policy positions taken in the past. We're told that we have a complaint-driven system. If the remedy for noncompliance is enforcement action, as stated in the zoning ordinance, priority, policy guidance need to come from the elected leadership, and resources need to be provided. We can't just keep loading things on to already busy staff. The community is not unreasonable in their concerns about the pace and scale of change in the county. Sound and consistent application of the principles of land use planning touch on so many facets of our lives. Consider the time you and so many others have put into addressing problems like housing, transportation, employment, water, natural resources. These are critical issues for the livability of our county. Thank you for your attention and the opportunity to provide comments. We look forward to hopefully getting notification that our agreement is adopted. And
Thank you.
Okay, thank you,
Thank you very
Catherine.
much, Catherine.
Then we have one other testimony in opposition, so Sid Friedman. So Sid, come on forward. You know the routine.
Thank you, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Sid Friedman. My address is 14286 Northwest Old Moores Valley Road in Yamhill. Like the previous speakers, I'm pleased that a resolution that if it doesn't make everyone thrilled, at least it's acceptable to all parties, so I am pleased by that. Catherine spoke about the need for policy guidance from this commission, and I do think there is an area of policy guidance that is germane to this application, which would be appropriate for you to make in your deliberations here. I want to call your attention to the first condition of approval, and particularly the second sentence, which reads as follows. Food service shall be limited to 2 meals per day for overnight guests, served either at the bed and breakfast or at the winery in accordance with ORS 215-452's sub 13. I just passed out that statute, and as you can see, it allows the meal service for when the B&B is on the same track as a winery that is established, and it allows the meal service in association with a winery. I believe, or I've come to believe that the applicant interprets this to mean that as soon as they get the approval for the B&B, they can go ahead with the meal service, even though their winery is not yet built, is under appeal, and I'm not even sure if they have a building permit for it yet. We believe that the statute means that the winery, as it says, it used the word established, that the winery must actually be built and be producing wine for the meal service to be in association with a winery. But ultimately, it's not up to either the applicant or the appellant to decide what the statute means. It's not up to your staff to decide what the statute means. And ultimately, if it goes through a process, it's ultimately not even up to you to decide what the statute means. Nonetheless, at this juncture, it's up to you to give guidance to your staff as to whether or not you intend for meal service to be permitted prior to the construction and operation of the winery. I hope you will do that in your deliberation, and that's all I have to say.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Sid.
Sid. Mr.
Okay, public agency reports.
Thank you, Chairman. Our office did send referrals to the public agencies listed in the staff report. The planning department did not receive any response to those referrals.
Okay, thank you. Any rebuttal by the applicant?
Elaine Albridge for the record. I have no rebuttal, but I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Okay, Commissioner, do you have any
I
questions?
just had a
ma'am?
question about the request regarding the limitation on meals prior to, what's your comment about that?
Our position is that we believe that the winery is established. It has final local land use approval. We've pulled building permits. We're in the process of obtaining our state and federal production permits. We're waiting to get our temporary occupancy permit. So the winery is being built as we speak.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
And the building exists too.
Correct.
Great. Okay,
Right.
that's my memory of the
Mhm.
previous
But they're
application.
looking to open sometime in May.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. That will take us, does anyone would like to keep the open record open? If open record is allowed, generally be 3 weeks for new, first week for new, second week for rebuttal, third week for the final word, and then after the third week, the applicant's final word, which deliberation to file and designate debt. So is there any request to keep the record open? Hearing none, we'll move on to staff recommendation.
Thank you, Chairman. Staff recommends approval of the application with the modified conditions as agreed upon by the applicant and appellant that I presented to you earlier.
Okay, thank you very much. So with that, what I will do is I will close the hearing and we'll go into deliberation. So Casey, let's start with you.
Okay, first of all, I want to really thank planners and applicant and Friends of Yamhill County for working together over and over throughout this. I really appreciate it. It was a delight to wake up to an email from Lance saying that you have been working together and this is what you came to. I'm just super proud to be in your community. And I wanted to express to be the first one to say that I think that we should have a work session of the Board of Commissioners on the topic that Catherine Druid raises in her letter. I think it is important for the commissioners to be able to talk about this in a setting where we're not making a specific land use decision. And we'll probably even have to be careful even then. But thank you for raising that. I think it's important for us to do that. And so I would like to, also put that out there that I'd love to have a work session scheduled. We're filling it up fast. And I wanted to bring up the letter from Catherine. I was trying to listen to you while I was following along, but I think that it's a really good example of a lot of important issues in the county that we do need to be talking about at the Board of Commissioners before they come up. And I really appreciated your comment. I feel like it goes back to things that Commissioner Sterrett says often, that we need to look at our rules, but that the rules always have an exception, and it's important to still address those and be aware of that relief valve for exceptions. I feel like it's really important because we can't make a rule for every situation. And then I also, I've raised this issue, but I don't know how to do it fairly, which is the enforcement funding that Catherine talks about, which is that I don't know whether it makes sense to put those additional funding into the fees that people pay, because most people aren't going to ever have any kind of enforcement against them. And so it seems to unfairly prejudice, it harms the people who are just coming to the county for something that they're never going to be enforced on. So I don't know how to do that, but it's an area of concern to me as well.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Sterrett.
Well, my first impression when I got the email from Lance was, to be honest, I feel like sometimes there's capitulation just because it's the lesser of two evils. In other words, I better take this because I might lose the whole thing. And sometimes it worries me when I see that that landowners have to struggle so much to ask permission for every use. What's the menu going to be? What's the food going to be? How many rooms is it going to be? And I feel that it's becoming more onerous to own private property and to want to make a living on your property. So I was a little disappointed, but I can understand that sometimes it has to happen or you lose the whole thing. So yeah, I'm glad there was an agreement. I'm glad everybody came to a conclusion and it's mutually acceptable, but I do feel that sometimes it's like really hard to just kind of move along with your business plan without getting opposition. So I'm glad there was an agreement, and I'm all for moving along.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. I guess my feeling on this is I was glad to get the email. Also, I really appreciate when two different opposing views come together and can work out agreement. I can go back to my, and I certainly appreciate the work the Friends did on this. I can go back to my ex-governmental experience where City of McMinnville worked a long time to go through a UGB amendment, and that never did come to fruition, but I've never always necessarily agreed with the Friends, but they brought a lot of things to the city as far as the use of slopes and the use of wetlands for parks. It mitigated some of the acreage we would need to bring in to the city. So I appreciate all the work they've done on this. I do agree with Commissioner Kula that we do need to have a work session in this to look at the overall picture and say, how can we make this process better and streamline some of the rules and processes, because I personally agree with Commissioner Sterrett that, you know, there's going to be exceptions to everything, but to be able to have to look at every one of these all at the same time, and we penalize, and that way we penalize the property owners, but we also penalize the neighbors, and it gets us good. So, and I think if it's more defined and what we're looking at, we would be much better off. As far as Mr. Friedman's recommendation, go the one he handed out today. What I've heard from the rebuttal from the applicant is, I believe the winery is far enough along. They've gone through land use. They've gone through, if they're going through the permit process, they look to be open sometime early this summer. That I think in this case, if we were talking the winery not being established for a year or 2 years, I may take this more importantly. But in this short period of time, I think that they should be allowed to serve the 2 meals a day, because we're getting that close enough by the time they open up business. So that's the only comments I have. So if there's no more deliberations, I'm ready to entertain a motion.
I move that we, let me get this right, or maybe Mary, move that we approve the approval, or move that we approve the conditional use request with the amended amended conditions of approval. That's incoherent, but I didn't have a script in front of me. So.
And as long as our land use attorney says that's fine, okay.
Thank you. He's smiling.
Okay, Todd's smiling. Yeah, so we do have a motion on the table, so all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, let it show that this item has been closed, and we'll,
Mr. Chair.
yes.
Bring this back for adoption of a written board order and findings on April 25th.
Okay, April 20th. Thank you, Todd. And Ken, put this one on your list for a work group too, work session also, would you please?
I think it would probably help me if I had more specifics on what the specific area or item or of process that we really want to talk about.
Yeah.
I think Ken and Lance probably
You know,
know a lot of the issues.
I'd like to say I do, but, you know, I'm reading this and I'm not sure specifically what the issue is. Other than, you know, I read about the equitableness of the comprehensive plan and land use ordinances, and we try to be equitable, but I'm not sure what that means. What part of it is at issue?
Of the comp plan and everything. I'm sure that the Friends could provide us a list of a lot of those kind of things, right, Catherine?
Or the chairman of your planning commission.
Or the chairman of our plan. Maybe that's something we should throw back at the planning commission to look at, since they had the hearing. I haven't listened to the minutes, or
Yeah,
read the
we
minutes,
read
or
the
listened
minutes,
to the
but you're-
recording, but maybe we should ask to actually have the planning commission take a look at that first before it comes, because it was their judgment. I mean,
I have notes
I
for
can reach out to Dan Armstrong and see if he has some issues he'd like to, have us talk about or talk to the board about.
I have
Okay.
I have a note that was pulled out of the letter, which was a conversation about evolving uses, ownership changes, and rule changes. So maybe that's
Okay.
part of the conversation.
and then you can talk to the planning commission, and then
Okay,
maybe
yeah.
bring back us a report.
I remember
on-
that Chair Armstrong was concerned.
So before
about-
we schedule that work session, Mary, we'll try to get a better handle on.
Yeah, because right now it seems a little nebulous, and it's like, what is what is, you know, what is the is we're trying
And
to
I'm sure the planning
deal
commission can
with.
provide us more.
What's the problem?
And I'm sure friends would could, said, you guys, you and Kath, you could provide us more
I
specifics.
guess what I'm worried about is
Yeah.
that we're just gonna be talking about this one situation, which seems like it's a unique situation, and.
No, I want to talk about the situation as a whole from a big overview, but I think the Friends could help in actually looking at not this situation, but all these kind of situations. But I think the Planning Commission is the place to start, so if you could reach out to them, and then we'll worry about scheduling, see if we need to schedule a work session, Ken.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so that takes us now into the rest of our agenda, and this is now the time for announcements. I'll turn over to Commissioner Starrett first.
Just, you know, the DHS bill is moving along, and our fingers are crossed on that one. And also the tax foreclosure bill is now in front of Revenue. So we don't know what that's gonna look like, but it's still alive.
Good.
So that's all I have.
Good. Casey?
I was hoping that you would take longer so that I could catch up.
Wait a minute, you only have your one comment.
That's right.
Next year, when you're a 2-year commissioner, you can go up to 2 comments.
Ooh, to 2 comments. Now, I'm busy with things, but I've been feeling a lot of gratitude lately that I get to work with the 2 of you and the staff. So, yeah.
You want something.
And I'm nearing my 100-day mark, so I've been thinking. About the last 10
we
days a
understand.
lot.
We understand.
Yeah.
Okay, well, the only thing, is that all then, Casey? The only thing I'll bring up is yesterday I spent my first meeting as a governor's appointee on the Willamette Falls Locks Commission, which is consists of 6 legislative appointees, 3 from the House, 3 from the Senate, and 6 governor appointees, and then a group of at-large employees representing people like the tourism industry, the marine industry. To say the least, this was the 5th meeting of the group they had. There was about 28 people there, and in a 4-hour, we're supposed to have a 4-hour work session. It was obvious after the first 15 minutes that we weren't going to get everything done in 4 hours. So that's a group that needs some work, but they're coming about. It's a brand new group, and the big thing is now is to look at funding once the Army Corps of Engineers gives it. They have to find, first of all, they have to find a governmental organization that will take over as the fiscal agent, and it looks like it's going to be Clackamas County, and also will do the contract management for the repair of the locks with the money coming from the Army Corps of Engineers, and that will probably be Clackamas County. And then they're working on funding, determine how the funding will go for the ongoing operation and maintenance of the locks, because I think it's pretty common knowledge that nobody wants to see the Army Corps of Engineers go in and just close the locks, put in a concrete slab at both end of them, and make the locks totally unusable. We want to maintain the locks. So then I went down to Salem, had a chance to meet with the governor. There were about 19 of us there, met with the governor, and then we met, and Representative Noble, and then we met with Senator Thatcher and Senator Beyer regarding bypass funding, and then we had a hearing in front of the informational hearing in front of the Joint Committee on Transportation. It's supposed to start 5:30. Ours was supposed to start at 5:30. It started about 7:30 last night. But it looks like pretty good. It looks like the governor's $32 million for, in her personal budget for additional design and engineering of the bypass is going to stay in her budget. And we've asked for the legislature through the transportation bill and some projects that were allocated that aren't going to be taking place, like the Rose Quarter upgrade, because the city of Portland and Metro pulled their funding out of it to tap some of that money, so we can get it the next year, get everything what they call shovel ready. Because once we can get it shovel ready, then we believe we can get the federal funds to complete the bypass from the Rex Hill end all the way to Dayton. So that's an ongoing process, but we're meeting there, and I guess that's all that I've been doing. And the legislative session will be over shortly.
I just
But
remember the
actually
island's
not
flooding
till
too,
June.
so
We've
that's
gotta
the
go
thing.
through this till in
Well, it's
June.
gearing down. though.
Yeah.
A lot of bills have already been killed,
I'm-
and so, but yours are still there. I like that. I
Still
like that.
alive.
Good life. So, anybody have anything else? Staff? Ken or Lance, you have anything? Christian? Todd? Ken?
Caroline.
You are a good man. That saying,
I'll stand.
meeting adjourned.
You asked Christian.
I can't leave.
Rick, what's wrong with you?